Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. If you like true crime without the drama and in a calm voice, you're in the right place. And let me just ask that after listening to or watching this video, if you find you enjoyed it or learned something, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment. And now, without further ado, let's dig in. Today, in the Delphi trial of Richard Allen, who is accused of unaliving teenagers Libby German and Abigail Williams back on February 13th of 2017, Dr. Roland Kaur, I think I'm saying his name right, a semi-retired forensic pathologist who did the autopsies of the girls on February 15th of that same year, 2017, testified. And what he talked about were the wounds that the girls received from a sharp object that has never been found. He said that Abby had one 2-inch laceration across her neck that damaged her left jugular vein. The cut appeared to have been made from right to left. Libby had significantly more wounds. The doctor said she had 4 to 5 wounds overlapping on her neck. 2 of them, one on each side, were lethal and hit arteries. And this meant that the red stuff would have spread out several feet, which likely explains the red that was found on the tree behind Libby. Both of Libby's hands were also covered in the red stuff, which indicated to the doctor that she may have grabbed her neck. It's so awful to hear about this stuff. The doctor estimated that the girls lived between 4 to 10 minutes after they sustained these injuries. That to me is horrible to hear, but the doctor also said that they likely lost consciousness before they died. I really hope that that happened instantaneously. According to the doctor, there were no signs of visible SA, but it could not be totally ruled out. The doctor said that it's just that no trauma was left on their bodies, indicating this. We do, of course, know that none of Richard Allen's DNA is found at the crime scene or on the girls, not even one little bitty hair from his noggin. Knowing that Libby had more severe wounds than Abby, and also that Libby was not wearing any clothes, and Abby, bizarrely, was wearing Libby's sweatshirt and her jeans, makes me think that Libby was the targeted victim. I mean, both girls were obviously nabbed, so they were both targeted, but it seems like there was more anger and rage toward Libby. Let's just imagine for a second that Richard Allen is indeed the perpetrator. Some people have said that Richard Allen's daughter resembles Libby, or vice versa, Libby resembles Richard Allen's daughter. We also know there's a photo of Richard Allen's daughter posing on the Monon High Bridge. I'm just wondering if there's some sort of connection here psychologically between Libby and Allen's daughter. We also know that one witness yesterday described seeing Bridge Guy on the Monon High Bridge, and she said that her impression was that he was waiting for someone. So of course this brings us back to, did Libby somehow communicate with Richard Allen, or did Richard Allen have information that Libby was going to be hiking the Monon High Bridge that day at that time? Or was the perpetrator watching for potential victims, and did he just happen to spot Libby and Abby and they fit the bill? A Delphi local named Sarah Carbow was driving on County Road 300 North near the Monon High Bridge trail entrance on the afternoon of February 13th, 2017, the day of the crime. She said she saw a group of people at the trail entrance looking stressed out. Those people, I'm thinking, were likely members of Libby's family who were out looking for her and for Abby. Later, as Sarah headed east, she drove past a man who was walking hunched over with both of his hands in his pockets. She said he was covered in mud and the red stuff. She described the guy's demeanor as, quote, sketchy. He was just 3 feet away from her car, and although she looked at him, he did not look back at her or make eye contact. She didn't tell the cops about the man for 3 weeks because, she said, she was scared. I'm telling you that if that were me, and I saw a man who looked like that, and if I found out a day or 2 later that 2 girls had been unalived in that area, I would have hightailed it to the police. To me, not sharing that information would have been scarier than telling the cops. But maybe Sarah was worried that her name would somehow be leaked, and if the perpetrator was still out there somewhere, he might come looking for her, since she would be a key witness. That makes sense to me. Sarah said that she later came to believe that the man she saw was the same man in Libby's video who came to be called Bridge Guy. The defense apparently was rough on this woman. They pointed out that she mentioned the word mud 11 times during her first interview with the cops. In her second interview in June of 2017, she apparently mentioned mud 13 times, but the word BLOOD was not in the transcript of either of those interviews. However, Sarah is adamant that she remembers talking to investigators about that. So is this an indication that the investigators didn't take good notes? Or did she really not mention the B word? During her third interview, 2 years later in 2019, Sarah mentioned the B word, we'll say, 16 times, but not the word mud or muddy. Go figure. Sarah said the reason for this is because that's what the investigators focused on during that third interview. Richard Allen's attorney, Andrew Baldwin, asked Sarah why she didn't stop to help the man. What? No way I'm stopping for a guy that looks like that. Sorry, not sorry. Sarah gave what I would consider a very reasonable answer, and that was that she didn't feel safe stopping to help some random man on the side of the road. What world is Andrew Baldwin living in? Personally, I think she got a bad vibe off that guy. We women trust our intuition. Heck, I wouldn't even offer Andrew Baldwin a ride. One of the problems with Sarah's testimony is that she apparently told the police the first time that the man was wearing a tan coat. She later changed her mind after seeing Libby's video of Bridge Guy. She said maybe she got the tan color because of all the mud that was on the man. Now, I briefly want to talk about Richard Allen. Yesterday, I heard from people who were in the courtroom that he has beady eyes. Apparently, he was turning around to look at his family. Now, in every mug shot that I've seen of him, his eyes appear sort of wild and beady. Just my opinion. I've also heard that on some days in court, he seems to stare at the victim's family members, and on other days, he seems to have a lighter mood, and he even smiles and laughs with his defense team. But how somebody's eyes look definitely doesn't mean they're guilty. Indiana State Police Sergeant Chris Cecil took the stand today. It might be Cecil. Cecil. To speak about cell phone data extracted from and linked to Libby's phone. Note that Abby did not have a cell phone. When Libby and Abby were still missing, investigators used cell towers to ping Libby's phone. Cell phone pings confirmed that Libby's phone was near the Monon High Bridge on February 13th at 2:05 p.m. 9 minutes later, at 2:14 p.m., Libby took the Bridge Guy video. Then, 17 minutes later, at 2:31 p.m., cell phone records noted a change in longitude, altitude, and elevation. According to Cecil, this meant the phone was moving as the girls were led down the hill and across Deer Creek. Just 8 minutes later, at 2:39 p.m., the phone was no longer moving, and it never moved again and it never pinged anywhere outside of the trails again. The phone gradually powered down throughout the night, and it ran out of battery supposedly at 10:32 p.m. But what's weird is that the phone woke with a spike of text at 4:34 a.m. 15 to 20 text messages showed up all at once, including one from Libby's grandmother that was sent 12 hours earlier saying, "Call me now." The text messages were never answered. Because the phone pings never left the area of the trails in Deer Creek where Libby and Abby vanished, this casts further doubt on the defense's theory of a possible nabbing and off-site unaliving, with the girls' bodies being brought back to that area under the Monon High Bridge and then dumped. I'm sorry guys, but that theory to me sounds totally crazy. I can understand the part about nabbing the girls and taking them to another location, maybe an isolated building, and unaliving them there. But the part about taking their dead bodies back to the trail system sounds far-fetched to me. Why would the perpetrator risk that? And how would he get their bodies to that location where they were found? It's not an easy location to navigate to. We also know that dead weight, no pun intended, is just that, and it's very hard to carry bodies. To take them to this area across Deer Creek and under the Monon High Bridge seems like it would have been very challenging, and there would be a great risk of being spotted. Also, the area where the girls' bodies were found was described as having several pools of the red stuff and being saturated with it. To me, this indicates that Libby and Abby were likely unalived at that location. We know Richard Allen just happened to be at the trail system around the same time as Libby and Abby that day. We know Richard Allen just happened to have a blue jacket, identical to the one Bridge Guy was wearing. We know that Richard Allen told the cops, when he came forward to say that he was at the Monon High Bridge that day, that he saw 3 young women. And we know that 3 young women who were interviewed and who were also at the trail system that day told the police that they saw Bridge Guy. We know that an unspent cartridge appears to be tied to a weapon that Richard Allen owns, and per the experts, at least on the prosecution's side, that cartridge was cycled through Richard Allen's weapon. We also heard that Allen confessed to the crime at least 60 times. I know there are instances of false confessions, but 60 times? This feels like a math equation. Bridge Guy equals Richard Allen. Allegedly. He hasn't been found guilty yet. On the other hand, none of Allen's DNA was found at the crime scene. Not one little hair off his noggin or clothing. But is that now enough to cast reasonable doubt over his guilt? You tell me in the comments, and I will see all you beautiful people next time on Bed Crime Stories.